The world was ending, and she could feel it in her bones. Alia's breath came shallow, each inhale a shuddering echo through the ruins of Basilicum Gate. The wind carried ash, the stench of promethium and the iron tang of blood. It swept through the broken cathedral where she lay, half buried beneath the wreckage of her own statue. Once she had stood above this place, towering, radiant, adored. Now her stone likeness lay split in two, its marble eyes staring blankly toward the burning sky. "Saint Alia still breathes," whispered a voice near the altar. The words trembled with disbelief. Footsteps drew closer, soldiers, their armor cracked, their faces blackened with soot. They had been fighting for hours without pause, defending the last relics of the imperial shrine world of Silistara. Above them, the sky was a bruise of black and crimson, where orbiting warships traded orbital fire that looked like lightning striking heaven itself. Alia turned her head slightly, the effort costing her more than any battle had. "Do not kneel," she rasped. Her voice, though faint, still held command. The men froze, uncertain. "There is no time for reverence, only faith, only fire." She tried to rise, but the pain rooted her down. A fragment of blessed marble had pierced her side, slick with her own blood. The relic burned faintly with residual sanctity. Each heartbeat drove consecrated agony through her veins, but she welcomed it. Pain meant she still lived. Outside, the city screamed. From the distance came the chittering of heretics and traitors, mutants warped by the ruinous powers, their chants drowning beneath the thunder of heavy bolters. The Sisters of the Argent Shroud held the southern wall, their hymns still audible through the din, voices raw yet unbroken. They fought like angels who had forgotten mercy. Alia could feel their devotion even here, pulsing like a second heartbeat through the veil of dying faith. For that was her gift, the burden she had carried since her ascension. To feel every prayer as it rose, to taste the purity or doubt behind each word. And now those prayers trembled with fear. She closed her eyes. The world fell away. The screams faded, and for a moment she saw the Imperium itself, its endless tides pressing close, hungry for the light of dying souls. It brushed against her spirit like a vast and terrible ocean, and from its depths came whispers, soft, serpentine, alluring. "You could live, Alia. You could rise again, serve a greater power." Her blood chilled. She had heard that voice before, long ago, when she was still mortal. She had rejected it then. She would reject it now. "No," she breathed. "I serve only the throne." The shadows recoiled. Her eyes opened again to the world of matter. The soldiers had dragged aside rubble and were kneeling around her now, their eyes wide with desperation. One, a young sergeant named Merrick, pressed a hand to his chest in salute. "Saint, the line is failing. We need your light. We need a miracle." Alia smiled faintly, a ghost of warmth amid ruin. "Then we will make one." Her hand trembled as she reached for her sword, still embedded in the shattered floor. It glowed faintly with residual flame, sanctified by decades of crusade. The blade's name was Sylvita's, the Redeemer's edge. It had sung with holy fire once when she led legions and burned heretics from the stars. Now it was dim, like her. "Bring me to the gates," she said. "Let me see the sky once more." Merrick hesitated. "You'll die." "I already have," she whispered. "Many times. This will be no different." They lifted her gently, armor creaking, banners fluttering torn and blackened. As they carried her through the fractured nave, the world beyond revealed its horror. The city had become a pyre, streets flooded with fire and bodies, hab blocks gutted by orbital bombardment. Titans burned in the distance, their god engines screaming as they fell. The horizon itself was aflame. And yet above it all, the cathedral of St. Alia still stood, though its spires were cracked and bleeding light. A fitting tomb. When they reached the gates, the sight before them froze every heart. The enemy was endless. Across the plaza, waves of cultists surged through the smoke, their banners stitched with the sigils of the dark gods. Behind them came the traitor guard, once imperial men, now twisted into mockeries by demonic whispers. Their tanks rolled forward, painted in blood, while corrupted psychers chanted incantations that warped the very air. Overhead, winged horrors circled like vultures, trailing screams. The defenders numbered less than 300. Aelia stood upon the threshold, leaning heavily on her sword. Every step sent agony through her body, but her eyes were clear, bright gold, lit from within by a light that refused to die. Merrick turned to her, desperate. "What do we do, my saint?" She looked past him toward the masses closing in. "We stand." And then she raised her blade. For an instant, silence fell. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then light erupted from her wounds, from her eyes, from every fracture in her armor. A golden radiance burst forth, casting long shadows through the plaza. The cultists faltered, shrieking, their symbols searing away in white flame. Her voice rang out, carried on the roar of faith itself. "You will not take this world. You will not profane his name." Bolters roared, lasguns screamed. The final battle began. Hours passed, time lost meaning. The square became a charnel pit of light and darkness, faith and madness. For every heretic cut down, 10 more rose, clawing over the bodies of their dead. The defenders were pushed back step by step, until the gates themselves trembled under the assault. Aelia fought until her arms went numb, until blood soaked her armor and her vision blurred. Yet still, the light did not fade. Each time she fell, the faithful lifted her again. Each time despair whispered, a spark answered. But even miracles have limits. At dusk, a great shadow fell over the plaza. The enemy parted. A figure stepped forward, a chaos lord, towering in black and crimson armor, his helm crowned with horns that scraped the smoke-filled sky. His voice was thunder. "Saint of the false emperor, your light ends here." Aelia stood alone before him. Her soldiers were gone, dead, dying, or kneeling in prayer. Her strength was ashes. Her sword flickered weakly, its light fading with her heartbeat. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but the light itself does not die." He charged, a monstrous shape wreathed in hellfire. His chain blade screamed as it met Sylvita's. The impact threw sparks and bone fragments across the square. Aelia staggered, blood spraying from her lips, yet she held. Her arms shook, but her gaze did not waver. "For the Emperor," she whispered. The Lord roared, slamming her down. Her sword clattered away. The giant's gauntlet closed around her throat. "Where is your God now?" he hissed. And then she smiled. The ground trembled. The air shimmered. Her blood, spilled across the stones, began to glow, runes forming from it, written in faith itself. The light spread outward, blinding, consuming everything in its path. The Chaos Lord screamed as the radiance burned through his armor, stripping away flesh, soul, and pride alike. Aelia's voice rose above it all, calm and unyielding. "He is where he has always been." Then everything was light. When it faded, the enemy was gone. The square was silent. Smoke drifted through the ruins, and at the center of it all lay Saint Aelia, motionless. Her body was broken, her face serene. The sword lay beside her, glowing faintly once more. Merrick stumbled through the aftermath, armor cracked, eyes wide. He fell to his knees beside her. "My saint, you saved us." But Aelia's lips still moved. Her eyes, half open, stared beyond him, at something no mortal could see. She whispered, "It is not done." Then her breath ceased. And far above the world, something ancient stirred. A light that flickered once, twice, and then began to fall toward the planet like a dying star. The saint was not finished. They buried her beneath the cathedral that bore her name. Or so they thought. The smoke had not yet cleared when the first pilgrims arrived. Survivors from the burning hive stumbled through the ruins, guided by a single light still flickering above the basilica spire, a candle flame against the void. They came bleeding, limping, clutching relics and prayers, and found the plaza covered in ash and the bodies of their protectors. But at the center of that devastation, Saint Alia's body lay untouched, her features calm, her armor still gleaming faintly in the twilight. The priests called it a sign. The soldiers called it impossible. Her faithful built a crypt around her where she had fallen, sealing her beneath marble and gold. They whispered hymns through cracked lips, believing her soul had already ascended to the Emperor's light. But beneath the stone, Alia was not gone. For 3 days her heart did not beat. For 3 nights her soul drifted between the veil and the warp, between death and eternity. And on the dawn of the 4th day she dreamed. The world she awoke to was not the one she had died in. It was neither the materium nor the immaterium, but something between, a cathedral of light suspended in the void. The walls pulsed with golden flame, the air alive with song, though no voices were visible. Each note was a prayer, each whisper a memory. Alia rose from her knees whole and unscarred, clothed in light. Her armor shone like the sun, her blade reformed in her grasp. She felt neither pain nor weariness, only a deep ache in her chest, an absence she could not name. Then she heard it. The heartbeat of the Imperium. It thundered through the void like a drumbeat in the bones of creation, vast and distant yet familiar. Each pulse carried a billion prayers, a billion cries for deliverance. It was beautiful. It was unbearable. And then she saw him. Not as a man, not as a shape, but as an endless radiance. A throne of light that filled the horizon, veiled by holiness beyond comprehension. Alia fell to her knees instinctively, tears burning her eyes. The presence washed over her like the first dawn. For a moment she was nothing but awe. "My lord," she whispered. No voice answered, only silence. Yet in that silence she understood. He was listening. Her hands trembled. "I have failed you. The city is ash. The faithful are broken. I gave all I had, and still the shadow grows." Still no sound. But within the light she felt a warmth, not comfort, not mercy, but purpose. The kind that burned away self-pity and left only truth. She realized then that her death had not been an ending. It was a calling. "Then send me back," she said, rising slowly. "Let me serve once more. Let me stand where others fall." The light pulsed once, and for an instant she thought she saw a figure standing within it. Tall, human, golden eyes behind a veil of brilliance. Then pain struck. The cathedral shattered into shards of flame. The prayers twisted into screams. The light became a storm of warp energy, pulling her downward into darkness. When Alia awoke again, her lungs filled with air that tasted of ash and incense. Her eyes opened to candlelight flickering across stone. She was lying within a coffin of glass and gold, the walls of the crypt pressing close. She could hear chanting above, faint and distant. Her heart beat once. Then again. She gasped. The glass fogged with her breath. She pressed a trembling hand against it, the realization dawning with terrible clarity she was alive. Alive when she should not be. Her body felt cold but strong, her wounds gone. The marble lid of her tomb bore the words "Rest Eternal, Saint Alia of Silistara." But the Emperor had denied her rest. She pressed harder, feeling divine strength flood her limbs. The glass cracked, once, twice, then shattered in a burst of light. The priests above heard it first, a sound like thunder beneath the altar. Candles flickered, icons trembled. Then a figure emerged from the crypt, haloed in light, her eyes burning gold. The screams that followed were not of fear, but awe. Within hours, the news spread through the ruins like wildfire. The saint had risen. Miracle resurrection, divine proof. The faithful gathered in the thousands, kneeling in the mud and ashes as Alia stepped into the daylight once more. Her presence alone drove back despair. Wounded men felt strength return to their limbs, and the dying drew new breath. The light around her pulsed with life, but beneath that brilliance she felt something else stirring, something foreign, subtle, and cold. She hid it well. for she knew miracles came with a price. Marek was the first to reach her. His face was gaunt, his armor dented, but his eyes shone. "My saint, we saw you fall. We buried you with our own hands." "And yet here I stand," Aelia said softly. "The Emperor's will is not done." He bowed, tears cutting lines through the grime on his cheeks. "The world will rise again because of you." But when his hand brushed hers, she felt it, the faint hum beneath her skin, like static. The warp trembled. For a moment, his face flickered with something unholy, as if reality itself struggled to hold its shape around her. Aelia's heart sank. She understood what the resurrection had cost. By the seventh day, the city's ruins had become a shrine. Pilgrims built pyres to burn the corpses of the fallen, their smoke rising like incense to the heavens. The surviving sisters rebuilt the chapel walls by hand, singing hymns as they worked. And through it all, Aelia guided them, her every word gospel, her every step leaving faint traces of light in the dust. But at night, when all others slept, she walked alone. The wound in her soul grew sharper. She could feel the warp watching her now, rippling like a mirror each time she prayed. Whispers followed her footsteps, some pleading, some mocking. "You did not rise by his hand," one murmured. "You took the gift of another." She ignored it, but the words festered. She began to dream again, dreams of fire and wings, of burning cities where her name was shouted not in prayer but in fear. Dreams of light that blinded, of faith that consumed. And in each dream she saw a figure standing at the edge of the flames, watching her with pity. When she awoke, her hands glowed faintly in the dark. The ecclesiarchy sent envoys within the month. Cardinals, confessors, and banners of the Adeptus Sororitas arrived to verify the miracle. They found her standing upon the cathedral steps, radiant and calm, her people kneeling before her. The high confessor approached, his voice trembling with both reverence and doubt. "Saint Aelia, the conclave must bear witness to your resurrection. Some say it is a blessing, others fear it may be sorcery." Aelia met his gaze. Would sorcery mend the broken? Would heresy drive back the shadow? He bowed, but hesitation lingered in his eyes. "Still, we must be certain. The Inquisition will wish to." "Let them come," she interrupted. "I have nothing to hide." Yet even as she said it, she felt the light flicker within her. For a heartbeat, she saw the world as it truly was, threads of warp energy woven through everything, pulsing faintly in her vision. Each soul glowed like a candle, fragile, beautiful. And above them all, unseen yet ever present, the Emperor's golden light flickered weakly, struggling to pierce the veil. She fell to her knees, trembling. "My lord, why show me this?" No answer came. But deep inside she sensed something stir, not divine, not pure. Curiosity. That night she prayed before the relic shrine, the cracked remains of her old statue. Her fingers traced the fractures in its stone, her tears falling between them. "I am your servant," she whispered. "Use me, but if I walk in error, strike me down before I fail you again." Silence answered, then faintly a voice. Not his. A woman's. "You are not his servant anymore." Aelia froze. The voice came from within, from the hollow left behind when she died. "Who speaks?" she demanded. "You know me," it said. "You called for light, I gave it. I gave you life when even he turned away." Her heart raced. "You lie." "Do I? Tell me, saint, when you stood before the throne, did he speak? Did he bless you? Or did he leave you in silence?" Aelia's breath caught. The memory burned sharp. The radiance, the silence, the warmth without words. "Begone," she said through clenched teeth. "I am his." The laughter that followed was like glass breaking. "Then prove it." And with that, the voice was gone. Aelia collapsed, her hands shaking. She stared down at her reflection in the shards of marble, and saw, for an instant, eyes that were not gold but crimson. She wept. By the next dawn, the pilgrims began to change. Those who had prayed nearest to her tomb now glowed faintly, their wounds healed overnight. But some began to mutter strange words in their sleep, and their eyes shimmered with unnatural light. When the priests questioned them, they only smiled and said, "We have seen the saint's true vision." Whispers spread that Alia's light could heal anything, even death itself, that her touch brought revelation, that her miracles had no end. She tried to stop them, tried to warn them that faith untempered by humility was peril. But each time she spoke, her words came laced with power, and their belief only deepened. Merrick came to her on the 9th night. "The people are building altars in your name. They call you the living saint eternal." Alia's heart broke. "That is not what I asked for." He hesitated. "You saved them. What else are they to worship?" She turned away. "Not me." But as she said it, the candle flames in the room bent toward her, as if drawn by unseen gravity. The shadows bowed. And she realized with growing horror that faith itself was feeding her now. Every prayer, every song, every whispered devotion, it flowed into her like a river of light and fire. The power was intoxicating, terrifying. Her hands glowed brighter. The walls began to tremble. Somewhere in the distance, a child cried out, and then was silenced by a miracle that left only ashes. Alia fell to her knees, gasping, "No, not this." But the voice inside her whispered again, softer now, seductive, "You asked for his will. Perhaps this is it." She screamed, "No." The cathedral walls cracked. Statues wept blood. The faithful outside felt the earth tremble and thought it a sign of divine power. They fell to their knees in worship, never knowing the saint they adored was tearing herself apart inside. Alia pressed her forehead to the floor, shaking. "Forgive me, my lord, forgive me." But only the echo of her own voice answered. And somewhere in the distance, something laughed. As dawn broke, Alia stood alone on the balcony overlooking the ruined city. The first light of the twin suns caught her armor, painting her in gold and scarlet. The people below sang her name, unaware of the storm gathering within her soul. She looked to the heavens. Once she had seen only faith there. Now she saw 1,000 eyes watching, waiting. And for the first time since her death, Saint Alia felt afraid. Because she understood the truth now. Her resurrection was not divine mercy. It was bait. And whatever had brought her back was not finished with her yet. The planet of Silistara no longer slept. From the charred hive cities to the silent battlefields, every soul had heard of her. The saint who died and rose again. The woman whose blood burned brighter than the sun. The Imperium had known many saints, but never one who walked from her own tomb. And never one whose miracles began to warp the world around her. At dawn, Alia stood before the basilica gates, watching her people gather. Thousands knelt in the dust, banners of white and gold fluttering weakly in the wind. They sang hymns to the emperor, but their eyes sought her, always her. Some called her his chosen voice, others whispered his equal. She felt their faith pressing against her like heat. It should have comforted her, it didn't. Each prayer was a thread of light that wound around her heart, tugging, binding. The more they believed, the stronger she became. The stronger she became, the more their faith fed her. It was a cycle without end, a fire that burned even the one it worshipped. And beneath it all, that whisper. "Why resist them, saint? Is this not what you fought for?" Alia's jaw tightened. "I fought for their souls, not their chains. And yet they bind themselves gladly." She ignored it and turned to the waiting assembly of clerics, soldiers, and sisters. The high confessor stood at their head, his crimson robe streaked with soot. His voice trembled as he spoke, not from age but from awe. "My saint," he said, "the fleet above reports signs of warp storms gathering at the system's edge. Some fear it is a sign of his displeasure. Others claim it heralds your ascension." Alia's gaze flicked skyward. The clouds above Silistara churned unnaturally, gold and crimson mixing like oil on water. The air shimmered faintly, charged with unseen energy. She could feel the warp bleeding through, drawn to her like a predator to blood. "It is neither," she said. "It is a test." The crowd murmured. She raised a hand and silence fell. "Faith does not seek comfort," she said, her voice echoing through the plaza. "Faith is the blade that cuts us open to reveal our souls. The storm comes because we have been seen, because something fears us. Do not look away." Her words rolled like thunder, and as she spoke, light bloomed faintly behind her, not from the sun, but from her. The crowd gasped. Alia felt the warmth surge through her veins again, unbidden. A pulse of divine, or perhaps false, power that responded to belief like a spark to tinder. She forced it down. "Hold fast," she said, her tone firm. "The Emperor protects." The words echoed hollowly inside her. That night she walked the ruins alone again. Celestara was quiet, save for the wind whistling through shattered spires. Her footsteps echoed over broken tiles once gilded with her image. She reached the shattered plaza where she had died, where her blood had burned away a chaos lord and an army. The stones still bore her imprint, scorched in the shape of wings. Alia knelt there, fingers tracing the marks. "How many died for me to live?" she whispered. "All of them," came the answer, "and yet you still doubt." The voice was closer now, softer, familiar. It wasn't the hissing tone of a demon's mockery. It was calm, almost gentle. It sounded like her. Alia looked up and her breath caught. A figure stood at the far edge of the square, wreathed in pale light, wearing armor identical to hers, though unbroken, unmarred. Her own face looked back at her, radiant and serene, but her eyes glowed not gold but pale white, empty. "Who are you?" Alia demanded, rising slowly. The figure smiled faintly. "The part of you that still remembers what you are, the part that accepted the gift when he would not answer." "I did not accept it." "You did," the double said. "You asked to serve again, and I made it so." Alia's grip tightened on her sword. "You are a lie." The apparition tilted her head. "Then strike me down." Alia hesitated. She could feel it. This presence was not entirely separate. It resonated with her soul, a reflection drawn from the warp's mirror. She knew if she struck, she would be striking herself. The moment of her own weakness made manifest. "You were given a second life," the reflection continued, stepping closer. "And now you waste it on guilt. You could reshape this world, heal it, bring light where his has grown dim. Isn't that what he would want?" Alia's voice was quiet but steady. "He does not need me to replace him." "Then why did he let you die?" The words struck harder than any blade. Alia staggered back, breath catching. The reflection's eyes softened. "Faith without answer becomes desperation," it said gently. "Desperation becomes power, and power is what keeps the darkness at bay." For a heartbeat, Alia wavered. The power within her pulsed in agreement, warm and soothing. The thought of surrender was tempting, to stop fighting, to simply become what the people already believed her to be. But then she remembered the screams. The child turned to ash, the tears of the sisters who prayed beside her tomb. Her jaw set. "No." The reflection frowned. "You cannot deny what you've become." "I am Saint Alia," she said firmly. "Servant of the Emperor, not yours." The light around her flared. Her reflection's form wavered, face twisting briefly into something darker, less human. Then it vanished, dissipating into ash and light. Alia fell to her knees, gasping, her body trembling with exhaustion. The whisper was gone, but its echo lingered. 3 days passed. The warp storm grew worse. The sun dimmed to a blood-red ember behind clouds of swirling energy. Communication with orbit failed, and the astropaths screamed until their minds broke. The pilgrims began to riot, desperate for guidance, and all their hopes turned to one name: Saint Alia. She felt the weight of their faith pressing harder than ever before. Her every word could spark peace or frenzy. When she walked through the cathedral, the air shimmered with residual psychic energy, bending reality around her presence. Even the sisters averted their gaze now, afraid to meet her eyes for too long. At the heart of the shrine, the High Confessor awaited her with a sealed message, the wax marked with the sigil of the Inquisition. He bowed deeply. "My saint, they are coming. An Ordo Hereticus fleet will arrive within the week. They wish to examine your resurrection." Aelia took the scroll but did not open it. Examine or condemn? The confessor swallowed. There are those who claim no mortal should return from death unbidden, that such power can only come from. He trailed off, unwilling to say the word. Aelia said it for him, chaos. He flinched. Her voice softened. "Do you think I am tainted, Father?" He looked torn between reverence and duty. Finally, he whispered, "I think you are proof that the Emperor still works among us, but there are men who see miracles as threats, and they will not hesitate to burn what they do not understand." Aelia nodded slowly. "Then I must understand before they come." That night she returned once more to the ruins of the plaza. The moonlight fell cold across the scarred stones. She closed her eyes and reached inward, not in prayer but in purpose, seeking the source of the power that now dwelled within her. The warp stirred in response, vast and waiting. And then she saw it. Not a demon, not a god. A single fragment of something radiant, drifting within her soul like a cinder of the sun. It pulsed with familiar warmth, the same light she had seen before the throne. The Emperor's light. But intertwined with it like a parasitic vine was another presence, something vast and serpentine, feeding on that fragment, mimicking its glow. Her heart froze. "What are you?" It answered not with words but with hunger. The light around her flared uncontrollably. The ground trembled, stones cracking under invisible force. Aelia clutched her chest, feeling her soul being pulled. The warp door opened before her. Out of the rift stepped her reflection again, now twisted, its armor bleeding shadow, its wings blackened ash. The smile was gone, replaced by hollow calm. "You could have accepted peace," it said. "Instead you cling to chains." Aelia rose, gripping her sword. "Then I'll break them myself." The doppelganger laughed. "You can't kill me, I am you." "Then I'll burn both of us," Aelia said and charged. The two saints collided with the force of faith itself. Light and shadow clashed, tearing the plaza apart. Each strike shattered air and stone alike. Aelia's blade sang with holy fire, her reflections burned with corruption. Every blow sent ripples through reality. Voices cried out across Celestara, pilgrims waking from dreams of fire, feeling the battle echo in their souls. Faith poured into the sky, drawn to the conflict like moths to flame. The storm above roared. And still neither yielded. "You cannot kill what you are," the reflection hissed. Aelia's voice was raw with fury and grief. "I can try." She drove her sword through the apparition's chest. Light burst outward, too bright, too pure. The shadow screamed as it dissolved, torn apart by the same faith it had corrupted. The rift imploded. When silence returned, Aelia lay in the ashes, trembling. The reflection was gone. But she knew it wasn't over. The sky cracked, lightning rained from the warp storm. And from orbit, the Inquisition fleet arrived, the mark of the Ordo Hereticus burning like judgment across the heavens. At dawn, she stood again before her people. Her armor was scorched, her eyes burned brighter than ever. The faithful filled the plaza once more, clutching icons, banners, relics. The first inquisitorial landers had already touched down beyond the horizon. "The Emperor tests us," she said, her voice carrying across the city. "But I will not kneel before fear. I will not yield to silence. If they come to question faith, then let them see what faith can do." The crowd roared her name. Her light blazed higher. And somewhere far above, Aboard a descending ship of the Inquisition, a man in black armor watched the readings on his auspex and whispered, "She is not what she seems." In the depths of the warp, something shifted, watching through the storm. The same presence that had whispered in her death now stirred again, amused. It had given her life once. It would not let her rest again. St. Alia's war was only beginning. The wind howled across the ruins of Lysara Prime, carrying the scent of smoke and sanctity. The air was thick with the taste of burnt oil and faith, and above the broken skyline, the sky itself looked wounded, veins of black lightning tearing through the crimson haze. The great cathedral of St. Lysara had become a fortress. Its stained glass windows, once glowing with divine light, were shattered into teeth of color that reflected the muzzle flashes of lasguns and the dim orange glow of promethium fires. Saint Ilaria stood at the altar, her armor cracked and scorched, the gilded aquila upon her breastplate blackened by soot. Her once bright halo field flickered like a dying candle, its light pulsing weakly. Around her, the remnants of her order, the Sisters of the Argent Dawn, held the line against the encroaching dark. They had fought for 3 days without rest. 3 days since the first demon tore through the veil and the first vox prayer went unanswered. 3 days since the sky had fallen, and she had felt the whisper of something ancient and cold move through the warp. Now, as she raised her sword, the blade of benediction, its edge shimmered with ghostly fire. She could hear the prayers of her sisters, recited through cracked lips and bloodied throats, echoing in the vaults. Each word was a defiance, a bulwark against despair. "Saint Ilaria," cried Sister Verine, kneeling beside a shattered column. Her faceplate was split open, revealing one good eye and one that bled freely. "The eastern gate has fallen. The penitent engines are gone." "I know," Ilaria answered softly. Her voice was calm, but her heart thundered like the beating of wings. "Then we hold the nave. We hold it until the bells fall silent." The ground shook. A deep, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of a dying god, rolled beneath the cathedral floor. Cracks spread through the marble. Statues of saints crumbled. From the fissures rose a heatless smoke, whispering words in a tongue that hurt to hear. Sister Verine made the sign of the aquila, her hand trembling. "They said the saints' miracles would never fade. That faith alone could." Ilaria's gaze turned toward the great statue behind the altar, a towering likeness of herself, carved long before her mortal ascension. It now leaned forward as though mourning, half its face sheared away by artillery fire. "Faith is not the absence of pain, Verine," she said quietly. "It is the will to endure it." From the shattered gates beyond came the sound of howling, not human, not demonic entirely, but something in between. The warp storm outside had grown so vast that the stars themselves had vanished. The first of the enemy entered through the ruins, mortals twisted by devotion to darker gods, their armor made from bone and wire, their eyes empty hollows glowing faintly. They bore banners stitched with flesh, icons blasphemous and grotesque. Ilaria stepped down from the altar. Her armor was heavy, but her stride was steady. The blade of benediction sang faintly, the hymn encoded in its machine spirit rising as though in recognition of her purpose. She stood before her sisters, those who remained, and raised the blade high. "We were never promised life eternal," she said, her voice rising to fill the burning cathedral. "Only that our deaths might mean something, so let it mean everything." They roared as one, a sound raw with conviction. Bolters thundered, and the nave erupted into chaos. The faithful met the heretics in a storm of flame and blood. Ilaria waded into the fray, her sword a burning arc that cut through armor and heresy alike. Her movements were precise, deliberate, each strike guided by discipline, not rage. Her eyes were calm even as enemies fell screaming before her. Then she saw him. Across the hall, past the fallen pews and shattered relics, a figure stepped through the smoke, a champion of ruin clad in spiked ceramite, his face hidden behind a skull mask of brass. In his hand, a chain axe the size of a man, dripping with blood that never dried. Around him, the air shimmered with the heat of corruption. Ilaria felt the temperature drop. Her sisters fell silent for an instant as the champion's laughter cut through the noise like broken glass. "Saint of the corpse god," the warrior sneered, his voice metallic, ancient. "Your miracles fade, your emperor forgets. Will you beg before I break you?" Ilaria raised her sword, its holy light flaring brighter than before. "I do not beg," she said. "I endure." The two met with the force of faith and damnation colliding. Sparks cascaded as the blade of benediction struck the chain axe. Each impact sent shockwaves through the nave. Marble split, relics shattered, and for a moment the air itself seemed to weep. They fought without words. The champion's blows were monstrous, each one capable of shattering ceramic. Ilaria's parries were fluid, born from decades of training and centuries of prayer. Blood ran from a wound in her side, but she pressed forward, driving him back with bursts of radiant fire. But the demon behind his eyes was ancient, and it whispered her name. "Ilaria," it hissed, "do you remember what you prayed for before your death?" For a heartbeat, her vision faltered. She saw not the burning cathedral, but the day she died centuries ago, the battlefield of Solara's reach, her sisters dead around her own hands trembling as she bled out in the Emperor's light. She had prayed not for victory, but for purpose. That purpose was now. With a cry that echoed through both matter and soul, she drove the blade of benediction deep into the champion's chest. Holy fire consumed him from within, bursting through the seams of his armor. He screamed, a sound that broke the stained glass teeth of the ruined windows. Ilaria fell to her knees, exhausted. Around her, her sisters still fought, their numbers dwindling. The enemy came on in waves. She whispered a prayer not for herself, but for those who would come after. "Let my words be the seed of faith," she breathed. "Let them hear even when the stars are silent." The cathedral roof cracked. A massive beam of light lanced through it, not from the sun, but from the storm itself. The warp tore open above the altar, revealing a rift of colors no human eye was meant to see. The ground trembled as something vast stirred beyond it. The sisters screamed, the heretics howled. Ilaria rose again, every bone in her body screaming in protest. She could see what was coming, not a demon, not a god, but the weight of all prayers unfulfilled, the echo of belief itself, drawn toward her like gravity. She understood. This was what it meant to be a saint, to bear faith so bright it could tear reality apart. Her armor began to glow. The fractures along her skin shimmered like veins of light. Her sword lifted, though her arm no longer obeyed her will. Varine, wounded but alive, reached out from the floor. "Saint Ilaria, what are you doing?" "I am ending the prayer," Ilaria said. The blade of benediction erupted in radiance. The cathedral became a star. Every window exploded outward as light poured from her in waves. Her enemies burned without sound. Her sisters were blinded, yet felt no pain. Then silence. Only the crackle of cooling stone and the faint hiss of fading light remained. Where Ilaria had stood, only ashes drifted in the shape of wings. And beneath the ruins, something stirred. A whisper moved through the Vox networks, carried by static, a voice, soft, impossible. "Do not mourn me, I am not gone." The voice reached orbit, then the fleet, then the whole sector. Ships that had not prayed in decades knelt their crews before the Emperor once more. And far away, on Holy Terra, a single candle in the Sanctum Imperialis flickered twice, though no wind touched it. Ilaria's miracle had not ended, it had only begun. The ashes of her passing began to fall across worlds, a fine dust of luminescence that healed wounds, calmed nightmares, and silenced demons for 7 days. Pilgrims called it the saint's reign. But even miracles have a cost. For in the warp, where her soul should have ascended to peace, Something had followed her, something that remembered her last words and refused to let them rest. And so Saint Ilaria awoke again. But not in the Emperor's light. She was adrift, surrounded by endless voices, praying, screaming, pleading, and all of them spoke with her voice. Her eyes opened to a realm of fire and shadow. There was no air, no ground, no sky, only the pressure of eternity crushing in from all directions. Saint Ilaria hung suspended in the warp like a shard of broken light. Her armor was gone, her body half translucent, the edges of her form flickering as if undecided whether she still existed. Around her stretched an ocean of colorless flame, vast, infinite, whispering. Every flicker in that expanse was a memory, every current a thought that wasn't hers. It was the Sea of Souls. She had heard preachers speak of it, the Emperor's realm of ascension, where saints and martyrs were carried upon wings of golden light. But there was no gold here, only ash and echo. And the whispers, always the whispers. You are not his anymore. Ilaria turned, though she had no body to turn with. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Its tone shifted, sometimes tender, sometimes cruel, always knowing. He took your light, Saint, burned you to fuel his throne, and now you are empty. No, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I gave it freely. The laughter that followed rippled through the warp, warping it like heat through glass. Shapes coalesced in the distance, mockeries of wings, faces made of smoke and regret. She tried to focus, to center herself in prayer, but her words melted into the current, devoured before they left her lips. The warp didn't allow silence or solitude. It filled every gap with reflection, of fear, of desire, of faith turned inside out. For a moment she saw her sisters again, Varine kneeling in the cathedral's ruins, the faithful weeping beneath falling light, and then gone, swallowed by the tides. Something was holding her here, something vast and patient. She drifted for what felt like days, though time had no meaning here. Each moment replayed her death in 1,000 versions. In one, she died screaming. In another, kneeling. In most, she died forgotten. Only once did she see herself rise again, and that vision terrified her most of all. It was then she sensed it, the pull. A current stronger than the rest, drawing her toward a shape on the horizon. A figure carved of shadow and flame, sitting upon a throne of screaming faces. Her instinct was to resist, but faith alone could not fight this gravity. She was dragged forward, faster and faster, until the horizon broke apart, until she stood before something ancient beyond comprehension. The figure smiled. Saint Ilaria of Lysara Prime, it said, each syllable grinding like the turning of planets. Faith's last daughter, the Emperor's perfect voice. I am his servant, she said, though her words faltered, and you are not worthy to speak his name. The thing laughed, its form rippling, part demon, part memory of a god long devoured. I do not need his name. I have yours. You burned so brightly that your echo lit half the Imperium, and where light shines, shadows gather. What do you want of me? I want your faith, it said simply, to see if it breaks. Then it lifted its hand, and the warp itself obeyed. In an instant, Ilaria was no longer adrift but standing upon a field of ruin, her cathedral, remade in nightmare. The walls pulsed like veins, the stained glass bled light that dripped into black pools on the floor. Her sisters were there too, but wrong, their faces eyeless, their voices a choir of weeping. The demon's voice rolled through the vision like thunder. Tell me, Saint, do you still believe when even your miracles betray you? Ilaria gripped the air, and in her hand the blade of benediction appeared, its light dim but present. She knelt and pressed the blade's edge to her forehead, whispering prayers through clenched teeth. Faith is not a bargain, she said. It is the only thing that endures. The vision rippled. The demon's amusement faded into something colder. Then endure this. The ground split. From the chasm rose the corpses of the fallen sisters she had loved, pilgrims she had failed to save, all staring with hollow devotion. Each whispered her name. Ilaria, why did you leave us? You promised we would rise with you. Her heart fractured under the weight of it. She knew this was illusion, a cruel mirror crafted to break her, yet hearing their voices made it real. She backed away as the dead advanced. You are not them. We are what your faith cost, they said together. We are the price of your sainthood. She closed her eyes, raised her sword, and screamed a prayer that tore through her throat like fire. Light erupted outward, not from anger but from mercy. When she opened her eyes, the vision was gone. The dead were dust. The cathedral was empty once more. The demon's laughter returned, quieter now. You burned so fiercely for one so small. Tell me, saint, how long until your light devours even you? Ilaria fell to her knees. Her soul flickered. She could feel herself thinning, unraveling, her edges dissolving into the warp stream. But in that unraveling she felt something else, something faint far away. A prayer. Soft, human, real. It came from the material world, from a child, perhaps, or a sister lighting a candle in her name. It was a voice trembling with hope, calling out, Saint Ilaria, hear me. And she did. The sound cut through the warp like a beacon. She reached toward it instinctively, and the void around her rippled in protest. The demon's presence grew sharp, angry. You cannot hear them, you are mine now. But she could. The prayer grew louder, joined by others, hundreds, thousands, voices across the Imperium whispering her name. They were faint, but together they became a song. Ilaria stood, the light within her steadied. Then I am not alone. The demon's form convulsed, its throne cracking beneath it. You would defy the will of eternity for a whisper. For a whisper of faith, she said, I would defy the galaxy. The blade of benediction blazed to life once more, not with warp light, but with something older and purer. She drove it downward, into the reflection of her cathedral, into the heart of the illusion. The world shattered. The demon roared, its form dissolving into mist and screams. This is not your resurrection. You will only wake in pain. So be it, she said, as the light consumed her once more. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on stone, cold, real, solid stone. Around her, the air was filled with the hum of machinery and the soft chant of voices. She smelled incense, promethium, and tears. Her first breath was agony. Her second was a miracle. Blessed Emperor, whispered a voice nearby. She turned her head weakly. A sister knelt beside her, Varine. Alive, older, scarred, but unmistakable. Her eyes were wide with awe and terror. Saint Ilaria. Ilaria tried to speak, but no sound came. Only a light, dim and trembling, rose from her chest. Varine clasped her hands, tears streaking down her soot-covered face. We never stopped praying. The rain fell for 7 days, the heretics fled, and then your voice, it led us here. Ilaria struggled to sit. Her body felt wrong, heavy, mortal again. Her wings were gone. The halo's glow was only memory, but she could feel her heartbeat. That alone was wonder enough. How long? She asked, her voice cracked and hollow. 30 years, Varine whispered, since the day you became light. 30 years. The weight of it nearly broke her. She remembered the endless sea, the demon's throne, the prayers that saved her. All of it compressed into the space between 2 breaths. She looked around. The chamber was a crypt, the ruins of the same cathedral, rebuilt in her honor. Her own statue loomed above, carved from marble, kneeling in eternal prayer. And upon the altar, candles burned in her name. Ilaria stared at them in silence. I am not worthy of this. You are what faith made you, Varine said, and faith made you eternal. But Ilaria's expression darkened. No, faith made me return, and something followed. A tremor ran through the stone floor. The candles flickered. Somewhere deep below the crypt, a whisper stirred, the same tone that had haunted her in the warp. "You think you have escaped me, Saint?" Ilaria stood, swaying but resolute. Her hand found the hilt of her sword, resting beside the altar as if waiting. "I will not let my faith be used against me," she said. Varine backed away, fear in her eyes. "Saint, what is happening?" Ilaria turned toward the darkness at the far end of the crypt. "The voice is coming back. The demon seeks flesh, my flesh." And from that blackness, a faint light bloomed, sickly, pulsating, shaped like her own silhouette. The voice echoed, mocking and intimate. "You said you would endure, then endure this." The walls shook. The statue above cracked, its marble eyes weeping molten tears. Ilaria lifted her sword, her face illuminated by its faint glow. "Then let this be my final endurance." As the crypt filled with the wailing of the damned and the sound of collapsing stone, Saint Ilaria charged once more into the dark. The stone floor buckled as Saint Ilaria charged into the dark. Marble shattered under her boots, and the flame of her blade cut a line of light through the crypt's suffocating gloom. The air around her pulsed, trembling with power. Every echo of her footstep was swallowed by whispers. She could feel it, the demon, the same voice that had stalked her through death and dream, twisting faith into shadow. It was not gone, it was waiting. Its corruption seeped through the foundations, feeding on centuries of prayer and grief. She moved deeper. The tunnel stretched far beneath the cathedral, carved by forgotten hands. Bones lay where the faithful had once sought sanctuary, their hollow sockets glowing faintly in her light. Behind her, Varine called out, "Saint, you can't go alone." But Ilaria did not turn. Her reply was steady, low, like a psalm carried on a storm wind. "I was alone when I found faith. I will not fear solitude now." The deeper she went, the heavier the air became, as though each breath she took sank into the earth itself. The walls were no longer stone but flesh-like, veins of red light pulsing beneath the surface. The candles she passed did not burn, they breathed. And then the whisper came again. "Ilaria." It was soft, like silk against glass, but beneath it lurked hunger. She raised her sword, its glow forming a small sun in the dark. "Show yourself." The crypt trembled. At first nothing moved, and then from the shadows a figure stepped forward. It wore her face. A perfect reflection, save that its eyes burned crimson and its lips curved in a knowing smile. Its armor was darker, a mockery of sanctity, the aquila upon its breast twisted into an open maw. "I have seen your light," the double said, voice resonant and calm. "I was born from it." Ilaria felt a weight in her chest, not fear but sorrow. "You are not me." "I am what your faith refused to face," the reflection replied. "Doubt, rage, the part of you that begged to rest but never could. When you burned in the Emperor's light, I burned too." Ilaria gripped her sword tighter. "You are the echo that clings to pain. I am the one who endures it." The twins' expression softened. "Endure? You call this endurance? You bled the stars with your miracles, and yet you cannot die. You inspire billions, but you have no peace. You gave everything, and still he is silent." The words were poison, sweetly spoken. They pressed against her thoughts like a knife at her throat. For a heartbeat, she almost listened. Then she lifted her sword and spoke quietly. "Silence is not absence. It is trust." Her blade cut through the air, holy fire trailing behind. The reflection met her blow with a blade of its own, identical in form but wreathed in black flame. The clash thundered through the crypt like a cathedral collapsing. Sparks of gold and red scattered through the dark. The two fought in perfect symmetry. Every movement Ilaria made, the reflection mirrored. Every prayer she whispered, the twin echoed with blasphemy. It was a duel not of flesh, but of belief itself. And slowly, her faith began to tremble. The reflection laughed as their blades locked, faces inches apart. "You see it, don't you? The truth. You are fighting yourself. The moment you fall silent, I will be whole." Illyria's strength faltered. Her vision swam. The air was thick with ash and memory, every miracle she had ever wrought replaying around her, twisted and corrupted. The rain that once healed now fell as blood. The statues of saints wept tears that burned through stone. Her hand slipped on the hilt. The reflection seized the moment, shoving her back. Illyria stumbled, falling to one knee. The twin approached slowly, its sword pointed toward her chest. "Kneel, pray if it brings you comfort. Your death will still feed me." Illyria looked up. Her breath was ragged, her body cracked with light seeping through the seams. She had nothing left, no strength, no certainty, only will. She pressed a bloodied hand to her chest, where her heart still pulsed faintly beneath the armor, and she whispered the same words she had spoken before her first death. "Let my words be the seed of faith." The reflection hesitated, its blade trembled. And then Illyria smiled, "Because faith does not end with me." The ground erupted in light. Not just hers, but countless others. The prayers of the faithful, echoing through the galaxy, answered in unison. From orbiting ships, from shrines on distant worlds, from the lips of soldiers dying in forgotten trenches. Their voices rose, forming a single phrase carried by the warp itself. "Saint Illyria, guide us." The twin screamed. Its form began to splinter, fragments peeling away like burnt parchment. "No, you cannot summon them here. Their faith belongs to him." "It always did," Illyria said. The blade of benediction ignited in blinding white. Her reflection lunged, desperate, but Illyria drove her sword forward, piercing both herself and her shadow through the heart. The impact was silence. Then came the light. The explosion tore through the crypt, consuming both in brilliance. Walls dissolved. The cathedral above shook. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire planet itself would shatter under the force of sanctity unleashed. And when the light faded, only Illyria remained kneeling, head bowed, her sword embedded in the ground before her. The reflection was gone. The whispers silenced. Varine stumbled down the stairway, clutching her chest from the aftershock. When she reached the chamber, she found Illyria motionless, her armor cracked open, her face serene. "Saint," she whispered. Illyria's eyes opened slowly. The glow within them was softer now, human again. "It is done." Varine fell to her knees. The voice. "Gone," Illyria said, "but so am I." Varine reached forward in panic, but Illyria shook her head gently. "Do not mourn. My purpose was not to live forever. It was to remind them why they believe." Her fingers brushed the hilt of her sword one final time. The weapon hummed, then dimmed, its machine spirit returning to rest. The air in the crypt grew still. "I have seen the warp," Illyria said softly. "I have walked through its hunger and its lies. And I tell you, sister, light is not something that can be taken. It is something that must be chosen every moment, no matter the dark." Varine wept silently. "What will we do without you?" Illyria smiled faintly. "You will pray, you will build, you will fall and rise again, because that is what it means to be human, and he never left you." Her body began to dissolve, turning to motes of light. Each mote drifted upward, carried by a wind that came from nowhere and everywhere. Varine reached out, tears streaming down her face. "Saint, please don't." Illyria placed a ghostly hand against her cheek. "Do not beg, endure." And then she was gone. The light spread through the cathedral, rising like dawn. The bells above, long silent, began to toll of their own accord. Across the city, people fell to their knees, gazing toward the sky as clouds split apart to reveal a faint, shimmering rain of gold. On every world that had ever spoken her name, the faithful felt it too. An instant of warmth, a whisper in their hearts. "Do not fear the dark." The Imperium recorded it as the miracle of the final benediction. In the years that followed, no image of Saint Illyria was ever carved again. Her likeness was forbidden, by her own final decree, discovered etched into the altar stone where she had vanished. It read, "Do not look for me in marble or flame. Look for me in the silence before prayer, and the courage after fear." Her sword was enshrined in the rebuilt cathedral, sealed in crystal. It never rusted, never dulled, and sometimes, when the wind was still, it sang. But deep in the warp where faith and nightmare meet, a faint light flickered still, neither lost nor trapped, watching, guiding, waiting for the next soul strong enough to endure. And somewhere in the far reaches of the Imperium, a child lit a candle and whispered, "Saint Ilaria, hear me." The flame did not waver. It burned steady and bright. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy seemed, if only for a breath, a little less dark.